So we're going to go ahead and start Rod's talk. I'm very excited to hear about his inspiration and see his work. He'll share a screen with us, and then after that, we will open it up for discussion via chat. If there are any questions, please direct them to the chat. All right, thank you so much, and welcome, Rod Forslund.
Thank you, Sarah, for the nice introduction, and thank you all for joining us on the Zoom call. I'm really excited that you gave me this opportunity to do this. Yeah, so the show Glimpses, Dreams, and Memories, it's a series of a collection of paintings that I've created mainly between, it's been between May and November, right when I joined Artworks. I mean, everything kind of happened at the same time. I joined Artworks and the shutdown happened. And before that, I was painting mostly, in the figurative form. I dabbled a little bit in abstract, but I really didn't have a lot of time to paint prior to quitting my job in 2018 and going full time. It was hard to do paintings when you have a full-time career. It's hard to really get in, to express what you really want to get into with art. The pandemic really allowed me to focus on the art. And what I really wanted to do was try something other than figurative. And I hadn't really done a lot of abstract. I always wanted to. It was like something, it's really not easy. People think abstract art is easy. It really isn't. Figurative, you know what you're painting. It's usually a reference to, you're painting a mountain or an animal or something. But with abstract, it really comes from the soul, I think. And I really felt that the pandemic gave me the time, and the studio here, the studio space, gave me the space to really investigate those things. So during May, and when I first moved in, I'm like, I'm gonna get into abstract and really discover this route, go down this path, and see where it takes me. I had no idea what would come out of it. So I got canvases and thought, well, I want to try to paint bigger too. I'd only done smaller abstract works. I'd done a few, which I'll share with you in the PowerPoint presentation coming up. But really the abstract came out in different ways, and many, every painting is its own journey. It's kind of interesting how it works. You work on a painting for a while, you put it aside, you start another one, you work on that, you rework it. They all end up coming up together as a series. You don't just do one and finish it. It's really, they all kind of have their own story, and they all come up together, and they all kind of tell, as you get into them, what the story is going to be. They're all different, and you don't know until you get into it. It's really been a very interesting experience doing the paintings because they all really tell their own story, and it's been very interesting for me to experience that through abstraction. So let me just get into this PowerPoint show so I can kind of show you where I started and how I developed into this the Glimpses, Dreams, and Memories series. So this is just an introductory slide here. So these first two examples are works that I was doing earlier in Chicago. They're smaller, about 9 by 12, I think, something like that. And I was influenced by my environment there. I would take the elevated train to work every day, and it's kind of an industrial looking ride along the tracks. And I was always inspired by all the, I don't know, I like industrial looking spaces, and there's so many of them as you ride the L. So I kind of expressed that in these smaller works. But mostly I was doing figurative work until this time. And when I quit my job in 2018, I quit my job, I sold my condo, and I moved to Santa Fe for about a year and rented an artist casita there. And I was doing mostly figurative work there too. I really didn't get into the abstract at that point. I spent about a year there painting and just kind of getting my legs. It took about a year to get into painting. I'd taken art classes and I'd painted in my youth, and I'd probably painted a few, maybe dozen paintings in the 30 years that I was in the corporate world, just because there wasn't time. So this was the time to sort it out and get into it and see what came out of it. And it took about a year, of painting in Santa Fe. And then I moved here to Colorado when I had family that moved out here in 2019, early 2019. And I started what I call the Big Sky series of paintings, which I'll show you an example of that right here. Moving out west, the skies are just amazing. I was really struck by the skies when I lived in Santa Fe and also here in Colorado. To me, the skies are just as dynamic as the mountains. There's just something about them. They touched me. So I did a series of about 12 large 30 by 40 paintings, which I had just started to exhibit at the time of the pandemic. And that coincided with me signing the lease here. So I had just finished that series and I had galleries lined up to show it and other venues to show it. And then everything went away like all of us. We all had we had things get canceled and we had to change our plans. So getting the studio here, I had this collection. I kind of moved everything in here and put some of them on the wall. But I just felt with the onset of the pandemic, I wanted to delve deeper and do another type of painting. I always wanted to do more abstract or abstract with figurative overlays to that because I like figurative and I like mixing in the abstract as well. So this I thought would be a good reset time. So I, made a deliberate, choice to paint in the abstract or semi-abstract paintings. And that's when I started the Glimpses, Dreams, and Memories series. I organized it around life events and my life up until this point and the places that I've lived. I grew up in the Midwest. I went to school in Iowa and Iowa State. Then after college, I moved to Chicago. I lived there off and on for 30 years. But I also lived in New York City a few times. I lived in Seattle in the Pacific Northwest. Then I moved back to Chicago and eventually ended up, working more years and then moving to Santa Fe in late 2018, spent a year there. And then in 2019, moved out here to Colorado. So I based the Glimpses, Dreams, and Memories on all those experiences I've had in life. And I thought that was a good way to organize kind of these abstract paintings because they're really a mixture of different memory, a glimpse of something, a dream or memory. And, each painting really is a combination of all those things, not just one, but usually it's an overlay of those things. And it's kind of interesting how that comes out in abstraction. So let me show you this is one of the first paintings that I did here at Artworks. This is Deconstructed Rigid Sky. It kind of speaks to, I think, my architectural background. I did a lot of drawing and this kind of has an architectural feel to it, I think, but mixed with organic overtones. So it was an interesting composition for me to put together in that way. So this was the first example of a large abstract type work that I did. I'll go on to the next one. This one is called Times Square Exuberance. This has kind of memories from when I lived in New York City. I used to go to work. I worked on 42nd Avenue and I would get off the train in Times Square every day. So it was always very chaotic. And I just have a memory of all the lights and all the activity that you get there. So this is a blending of all my memories and glimpses and of that time there. And I always remember, well, it was a very exuberant time. So that's what this painting kind of meant to me. I'll go on to another one. Now this I painted, this one's called Combustion. This is a memory of kind of the summer that we had with all the, I painted this while all the wildfires are going on. So it has a lot of kind of a fire theme to it. And that's why, hence the name Combustion. This was a fun composition to put together with kind of has a lot of interesting shapes to put together, and I played with the colors and the textures. There's also another one. This one's called Fire in the Sky. This also coincides with the summer that we had, with the skies here being this red color often many days. So that also speaks in this particular painting. And these paintings are, I did a lot of mixed media. A lot of them were started in acrylic. There's probably some oil in them, some pastel, some colored pencil, a little India ink, a little bit of everything. And the techniques, I tried all sorts of new techniques, scumbling and layering and scraping and adding and taking away. And it's something I wasn't doing in my figurative work. So it's been fun to figure out what each thing does and how it changes the painting. And they just have so much, there's just been an experience as I'm painting them. Let me go to the next one. Now this one is a very playful painting. It's called Time of Discovery, and it just has a kind of almost a juvenile feel to it, or just a light feel to it. And it's more on the abstract side. I believe it's mostly oil. I think I may have started in acrylic and finished in oil. There's a little India ink in it as well, and some drips. I also learned to use the drip technique. I hadn't used that until I started this process. So it kind of they take a life of their own. You get into the painting, you just get in there and start discovering things, and keep working on them and see where they take you. And it's just, it's really experiential. The next one is, this is called, so Winter Wind is Brutal, and we're kind of having a day like that here today. So it has a lot of, living in Chicago, we had a lot of brutal winters with the wind going sideways and everything's kind of a blur, and this kind of reminds me of that, that experience over the years that I had. So there's a lot of movement in here. It has a winter feel, but there's some architecture in there as well. There's a lot of layers. A lot of these paintings started out as something else completely, and then I painted over them and maybe left part and added other things, and they really changed dramatically over time, which I think it's a fun experience, and then you have to decide when they're done. So that's another learning experience. Go to the next slide. This is Windy City Riverwalk, which is a memory of the Chicago Riverwalk, which I spent a lot of time. I worked in River North, and I spent a lot of time along the river at lunchtime. I would go down there and sit. And this is always very active. So this is more of a dream and a memory, kind of all these things together, overlaid, with people and things are moving around. There's all sorts of noise, and it's trying to convey that chaotic kind of a feel that cities have, which I miss cities because we weren't able to really experience them this year. We were all locked away, and a lot of these are memories of things that we couldn't experience during the summer. So it was kind of fun painting the memories of those moments in the city. And I couldn't go visit. I would normally go visit, my friends in Chicago over the summer, but I couldn't. So it's just, this is an expression of how those moments feel when I'm in the city. This next slide is it's post-industrial sunrise. And this is just really based on kind of the industrial feeling of a city. It could be anywhere. That seems like every city has kind of an industrial area, and that's what this painting is trying to convey. So it's a mixture of glimpses and memories and all those things layered together. There's a lot of kind of color study and light and dark, and play on texture, and it's very architectural, I think, as well. city passage. And this is a series of 5 small 10 by 10 paintings that I put together when I was back in Chicago in 2019. I took the pictures that I painted these from the L. When I went by, I was downtown in the Loop, took a picture every 2 seconds or so, and this is what came of that. So it's kind of it's trying to convey motion, architecture, and dark and light, and plan composition. And kind of from afar, it looks abstract, and then when you get up close, you see a little bit more of the detail, and you can tell what that these are street scenes, and those lighter parts of the painting are kind of what they call keyholes, where the light comes in. And I added texture to just that part of the painting. This is acrylic. It's an acrylic painting. The lighter parts of the painting I actually added where the light is coming in at the keyholes. I added a mixture of sea salt, so it has a texture to it. When you see it in real life, you can't really tell here on the screen, but it has a texture to it that catches the light. And then I did a cold wax finish on these to build up a little bit of a atmosphere to the paintings. So that was a whole nother kind of expression of abstract. And then this last one is the largest painting that I did here, and it's about 30 inches by 80 inches. It's 2 panels put together. And this is kind of a celebration of my time in New Mexico. I lived in the Galisteo Basin down there, which is a very beautiful area, very New Mexico, the landscape. So this is the feeling that I got when I was down there and hiked in this area of the Galisteo Basin. There's lots of texture. So this is very heavily textured. There's many layers. I incorporated a lot of different mediums, and it's mostly oil, but also some pastel and a little India ink. But it's a very thick application of paint. And that's another thing I learned over time, is to, build up the layers. It really adds a lot to a painting. The more layers you have, the more interesting it is, I think. And this, it helps it take on a life of its own. So that's kind of my highlights of the show. I made about 20 paintings in all. This is about half of that amount. But yes, that's kind of the highlights of my show. So I'm gonna turn this. I'm gonna go to Zoom. Okay.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Rod. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
I found really, really interesting how many materials you're using in each of these pieces. I hadn't known that, and it builds so much texture, and what a great way to kind of experiment being new to the medium. And you were just throwing everything up there, and it works. That sometimes that doesn't always work, and I think it was super successful in these pieces. Beth Franklin says congratulations on winning Best of the Show in the BAA exhibit.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.
Good job there. And Jenny Milner has a question. Do you have a method for layering, or is it all experimental?
Well, right to this point, they've all been experimental. Every painting I approach differently, so it's a combination of different kinds of layers. Some don't have that many layers, and some have a lot. But I've learned from doing it what works for me now. So when I keep going with the series, I'll be informed by that information. It'll be interesting to see what goes forward from this, with building the layers.
Great.
Yeah.
Are there other questions? At this point, if you want to just jump in audio, and Jenny asks if she couldn't remember if you use oil or acrylic, and you use both, correct?
Yes, both. Some are either or, and most of them are a combination of acrylic and oil. Yeah, I like working in both. They're both very different, but I like to work in both.
Great. Samantha says, I love your sense of color. Could you talk more about your experience in interior design? How your experience in interior design relates to your use of color and shape in your paintings?
I think it has a lot to do with it. I think, My job was to select colors and materials and put together entire buildings. So I think that translates to combining colors and materials and textures in art. I think they're very much related. Design and art, I think they go hand in hand. I think I've learned that from doing this exercise of painting. I didn't realize they were that closely related, but I really think I'm using the same kind of parts of my brain to compose a painting as I did when I composed a building. So it's been interesting to discover that. But yes, I think they have a lot in common. Definitely.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, the questions are coming in. This is wonderful. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks everybody for the questions.
We had an online question from Barbara. Hello, Rod. Now that we have gotten to a look at your past 30 years, maybe you know Barbara, which is amazing.
I do.
She
We went to high school.
What is going to be your next project? What direction will your art be going in?
That's a good question. I'm going to continue I believe I'm going to keep adding to this Glimpses, Dreams, and Memories series for a while. And then I'm going to see what develops from that and then move to another series maybe. But it's something I'll discover, I think, in the next few months. Time will tell. It's until I get into it, I don't know. It depends on where the paintings take me. I'm anxious to see. I mean, I feel like I'm just getting started with this whole painting, world. So I think I have a lot to discover yet. So I'm not sure. It's going to be interesting. But I have a lot more to discover, I think, for sure. I think it's a lifelong thing. I don't think you ever stop discovering new things and new techniques and new directions. So I'm just going to see where it leads. Thanks for the question.
We're excited to see as well.
Thank you.
Sarah asks, how and when do you decide that you are done with a painting? That's a great question.
Yeah, it can be tricky because there's a lot of paintings I thought I was done and I put them away, and then I'd look at them a month or two later even and discover I don't like this painting anymore. I'd completely change it. And a lot of times I'm glad that I did, because in the end I think I got a better painting from kept going on and discovering more, and it ended up being stronger. So it takes it's sort of an intuitive thing, I think. You have to see if all the things are working all through the painting, and at some point you just can't do anymore, and you stop. And I think I've learned to do that better as time went on and more paintings were produced, like kind of new. I'm learning when the point is that I should stop. But I think it's intuitive. Because with layering, it could never be done. You could do that forever, I think. So you just have to draw a line, I think, at some point and say you're done.
I like the idea of having the previous paintings behind and using that as an underpainting.
You'd be surprised what's behind these paintings. I even took old paintings of like a landscape and made them completely different, abstract over the top. So it's interesting what you can do.
Someone may be x-raying your paintings in 100 years.
They're going to be surprised.
Jenny Milliner just commented that she loves your use of oil and acrylic. She never thought of that.
Thank you.
And she wants to play with oils, but doesn't want to buy all the colors. So thanks for the permission. Again, your exhibition has been entirely so inspiring for many of our artists and the community.
That means a lot to hear from my peers. It really does. Thank you, everyone. I've had a lot of great discussions with the artists here in the last few weeks, and it's been really inspiring for me to hear their reactions and to see their work, because I think we really have a really good, diverse group of artists here. And I'm excited to see, as we emerge from the pandemic and we can actually get together more, what we can all do collectively. I think it'll be an exciting year for all of us.
I think we're all looking forward to that.
Yes.
Just a couple other questions and comments. Jenny Kiesling was pulled away, but said that she thinks the work is stunning, unique, and she'd love to know how you're defining abstraction and who you're looking at. What artists are inspiring you?
Oh, there's a lot. I really like, I've always liked Paul Klay's work, de Kooning. Um, there's some, you know, Moreau, a lot of the, even, um, you know, there's more contemporary ones. I follow people on social media that are contemporary artists. And I watch a lot of YouTube videos from contemporary artists that inspire me and I learn a lot from. And I think I interpret what is abstract by, if it's not, you know, like a landscape and you can tell what every, you know, it's not so figurative. It's much more um, layered and has more meaning to it than just painting a thing and having it, you know, be a mountain or an animal or something. I like to layer my paintings, and to me that's abstraction, having multiple images kind of overlaying each other. And I think that's what most of these paintings kind of express. So I think it has to do with the layering and having different images overlaying each other. That's my interpretation.
I was really struck with you. You sort of sit in this limit, you know, this liminal place between abstraction and representation.
Yeah.
You've got
Yes.
some representation elements, representative elements, and some abstraction.
And I think I want to pursue that more because I have, you know, when I did my day job in design, I had to be very correct with what I rendered, you know, so I had to be very accurate. So it's kind of, I still like having that accuracy part, but then having all this abstraction around it. I like the combination of the two. So I want to see where that goes. I don't think I'll go totally abstract. I like having the mixture of the figurative with the abstract. But I think there's a lot I could do with that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
Yeah,
that way, and
it's
I have a
fun.
place to rest and recognize, and then
Yes,
drift
it's
off.
nice to have some things that are figurative that you recognize, but then it gets more interesting, and you have to stop and look. And I want people to interpret their own way what the painting is trying to say, which I don't, you know, which figurative to me doesn't do as much. I think abstract, you can get more into, you know, your own feeling, projecting your own feeling onto the painting.
Samantha has another question. Could you talk about the differences and similarities in your experience in the artist community while you were in Santa Fe and your experiences here at Artworks? Do you think these differences and similarities in artistic environment show through in the work you produce? Thanks, Samantha. Great question.
That's a great question. I lived in an amazing community. I lived in Galisteo, which is south of Santa Fe, which is everybody's either an artist or a patron of the arts. It's all about art. It was such an amazing place to live. Everybody, it was all about art. We had just the best community of people, and it's similar here. Everybody's very open, and I mean, artists are just wonderful people. They're very interesting and open-minded, and everyone's doing something different. I love both places. They're so rich in experience, and I think that's contributed a lot to my art in such a short time because of those experiences in such a short time. Definitely, they've made a major have had a major influence on my life. There's something about having a community of people that are like-minded, and artists have great communities of people to learn from and get to know. So I'm looking forward to, with things opening up, getting to know people even more.
Great. Are there any other questions or comments? At this point, if you'd like to go back to gallery view and turn your video on so we can see your faces, don't feel like you have to. But I'd love to see our community of artists supporting Rod.
Thanks, everyone.
I guess
good to see everybody.
There we go. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Rod. Really phenomenal talk. I can't wait to see, you know, I'm sure we all can't wait to see what you're doing next. The show is up until this Saturday. It comes down this Saturday. So this is our closing talk, but I don't think we've seen the last of Rod and his beautiful work. So really, thank you all for participating in this Zoom. I really, really appreciate it. This is a great showing, great support for Rod and his efforts.
Thank you, everyone.
Just phenomenal. Stay
Thank you.
safe in the snow today. Wasn't expecting this much. I thought we were just going to get a dusting, but that's all right. Jenny, you're probably buried up there in the mountains. So thank you all. Our next artist talk will be, let's see, for Brenda Jones, a visiting artist from Creed, Colorado, a ceramicist, and she will be, the talk is to be determined. It'll be sometime in February, but the opening will be a live in-person opening on February 12th. You will have to reserve a spot for that. So thank you so much again. And we at Artworks really appreciate everyone's support here. Thank you. Stay safe.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.